Good morning everybody, and welcome to this morning's webinar, Connecting Customers and Delighting Them. My name is David Telford and we're very grateful for your participation in today's session. Just a legal disclaimer that makes the point that we'll be talking potentially about forward-facing information, so your discretion is appreciated. In terms of today's agenda, as I said, my name is David Telford. I'm going to be doing a very brief introduction to QlikView, and the bulk of today's presentation is going to be handled by Darren, who's the owner of Industrial CodeBox, who are a strategic technology partner of QlikTech, and Darren will talk to you in more detail about their offerings and their capabilities. From our point of view, the area of social media is of great strategic interest to QlikView and our customers, so we're delighted that you're able to join us in today's session. We're going to have everybody on mute during the presentation, so if you do have questions, can you please log them in the Q&A section, which you'll see on the corner of your screen. Then at the end of Darren's presentation, we'll cover the questions. So QlikView is a disruptive technology. Following our foundation in Sweden in the early 1990s, we've had rapid growth, and as you can see, we have customers that represent a variety of industries and represent a variety of geographies. We have currently 28,000 customers in over 100 countries, and we have 1,500 partners. From our point of view, we're delighted that we continue to be recognized in the leader quadrant of the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and our success is built on the usability of our solution and its ability to drive value to our customers. Information workers are hunter-gatherers. We like to describe the way that business users make decisions as very similar to the way that in previous generations hunters followed animal scent. So it's important that users are able to follow natural flows of information wherever it takes them, and that they're not constrained by existing predefined report structures. We're also social in the way that we make decisions. It's very unusual that decisions are made in isolation. They're made in groups, so it's important that technology allows those decisions to be made in those frameworks and in those contexts. And also we're very mobile. Technology needs to reflect the places and locations where decisions need to be made. Mobility can mean on the shop floor, on the plant floor, at customer offices, or it can simply mean moving location within an office environment. And QlikView is successful because it recognizes these fundamental requirements of a business decision-making platform. Obviously, from a business intelligence vendor, we are very convinced about the importance of quantitative data in decision making, but it's equally important that qualitative inputs are taken into the decision making process. People's experiences, people's experience of best practice need to be incorporated. So good decisions are made with a combination of data and insights. Traditional BI is very report centric. It tends to be based around existing report structures which tend to be produced by the IT department, and as a result can be quite inflexible. If your data and your reporting requirements are very static and don't change significantly, then this approach is perfectly adequate. But our experience is that most businesses experience the need to adapt their reporting requirements based on changing circumstances, and this particular approach isn't particularly conducive to doing that. QlikView operates in what Gartner describe as data discovery and we describe as business discovery. It's essentially user-driven BI. It allows the user to search data in an application environment, as you'll see in Darren's presentation, and it provides much more flexibility and ability to drill into data to really understand what's driving results. It's not a matter of one or the other. These two approaches can and do often coexist. It's about recognizing the strengths of the different approaches and being clear about which one delivers value to your business in addressing your problems. And essentially, it's all about asking and answering the next question. A traditional report or visualization will tell you what you've written a report to tell you. It'll tell you your sales performance, it'll tell you your margin. What it won't tell you and what it won't give you is the ability to drill into why performance is as it is. QlikView is all about providing users with the ability to drill into data, to drill into reports at a very granular level so that you can truly make discoveries about your data. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Darren, who's going to take you through the bulk of today's presentation. As I mentioned at the beginning, if you do have questions, can you please log them in the Q&A section, and we will summarize those questions at the end, and Darren will cover them off then. So thank you very much. Over to Darren.
Okay, thank you, David, and thanks for attending today's session on sentiment analytics in QlikView. So a little bit more in my agenda. I'm going to talk about us as a business, about how companies are using online systems or SaaS systems more and more, about the combination of QVSource and QlikView. Then I'm going to talk about some connectors, in particular sentiment analytics, and then I'll show you some examples of how it's being used, and talk about how some of our customers are using QlikView and QVSource to drive a new way of thinking and business decision making within their organizations. So we are a strategic QlikView technology partner, and we've been working with QlikView for over 7 years. We've always developed add-on products for QlikView. So we started out with the Workbench a number of years ago, which is now a QlikTech product as it's acquired from us. And we have other things like QVXL and our flagship product now, QVSource. So over the last 7 years, we worked very closely with QlikTech, with their R&D team over in Sweden, and we know the guys very well. And we're very well known and trusted within the QlikView community, both with QlikTech itself, with QlikTech partners, and with obviously with QlikView customers. And although we're based in the UK, we work with many global partners and have customers all over the world. But the bottom line with ICB is we specialise in getting data in and out of QlikView in, I guess, the more quirky ways. So over the last 10 years, the word SaaS, or software as a service, has become more of a complex thing. And even during recessions, the growth of SaaS has been pretty unprecedented. And Gartner predicts that within the next few years, 15% of software enterprise application purchases will actually be SaaS. But the key thing with SaaS is that your data tends to be held on external systems. So whereas traditionally you'd have your SQL servers with your own data internally, it's held out there on someone else's machine, which can present its own set of challenges in terms of reporting and understanding the data that's on those systems. And QVSource can help in getting that data from the external storage places into your QlikView applications. And often with these products, reporting is limited to what they think you need, so they may limit the data that's available and the design. So it may answer some of your questions, but not all of them. Just a few examples of how some companies are using social media. Dow generate about $6.5 billion through Twitter alone. So they use that now as a dedicated sales channel to their business. KLM, the Dutch airline, have a policy that if you tweet with KLM, they will get back to you within 1 hour. So they're trying to drive customer service through Twitter. And during last year's US elections, there were over 2.7 billion YouTube views relating to Obama and Romney. And very much the winner of that election race was down to their social media presence and penetration. So the impacts of social media are pretty immense, and we've only just begun really on that journey, as social media is quite new. So some people are using social media because everybody else is. They know that there are close to 1 billion Facebook users. They know that everyone is tweeting, and they think they should be there. And although using social media platforms are free in most cases, there is a cost to using them. For example, manning the pages and so on and so forth. One of the key aspects, though, is that if you can't measure your performance, then how do you know you're actually using it effectively? And are you adding value to your brands? In fact, are you having a detrimental effect on your brands? And are you improving over time? And one of the key parts of something like QlikView or business discovery is that you're constantly testing and measuring. So you're seeing how you're performing financially or through your sales records. Is it going to plan? If it is, continue. If it's not, you evaluate it, you ask those difficult questions, and you improve your business operations. And just in the same way that you might do it for sales or finance, you should really do that for social media, because it's the outward-facing part of your business. So it makes complete sense that a social media strategy and reporting should be part of your BI delivery. So QlikView and QVSource is quite a unique combination because it gives you more insight into your business. You get all the rich data visualizations and the associative nature of QlikView, but you're now able to bring in kind of external elements to your business. So you can now get a much more complete picture of what's going on in your business operations. To QlikView, it's just more data sources. It doesn't really understand that it's talking to Twitter or Facebook or Google Analytics. It's just more data. So the great thing with using QlikView and QVSource is that when you are looking at social media, because these platforms are so fluid and there is no constraints or predefinitions to the data, it actually makes it very hard to report. But as David sort of mentioned before, because of the nature of QlikView and the way that you can answer the next question by intuitively navigating your way through the data, you actually get more value. And so because of that fluidity of social media analytics, using QVSource and QlikView gives you a really unique reporting possibilities and allows you to make some really great business decisions. Of course, with QVSource, because we can connect to so many data sources, it means that more parts of your business can actually benefit from QlikView. So it could be sales, marketing, could be the IT, the web team, whoever it may be, customer service even. So for those of you that know QlikView, and for those that may have just seen a little bit of it, I'm just going to explain where QVSource sits. So with QlikView, we have the QlikView logo at the bottom, and in there we can put in our internal data, although obviously you don't have to, and we can present our normal data through dashboards. But when we load the data into QlikView, we can also reach out to QVSource and then pull data down from various platforms that are based on the web. So we connect to Twitter or Facebook or Google or YouTube and many others through their official APIs, and we will request data based upon your needs. So you may say, give me all the tweets that have, that relate to Wimbledon or Murray winning at the weekend. So QVSource will reach out to Twitter and pull down those tweets. And okay, that sounds very good, but what can you do with it? Well, we can then enrich the data. We can then take that data and send out the tweets or the Facebook postings or even emails and spreadsheet content to one of our sentiment engines using our sentiment connector. So we will connect to one of several sentiment companies. They will crunch the data and then send back whatever it is you're interested in. So we can turn text into numbers. We can say, was it a positive thing or a negative thing or a neutral thing? Typically scored between -1 and 1. So we're now turning unstructured text into some kind of numerical data, which we can then, of course, use in dashboards and score and get a feel for what people are saying, get a feel for the mood. We can also do text analytics, where we can pull out the topics and the adverbs and the verbs and words that are of interest. So we can take millions of individual words and pull out the things actually quite interesting to us, and not just have a large collection of prose, which is great but has no real meaning and doesn't really help you drive business decisions. But using QVSource, you can take these big blocks of text and break them down into useful sort of constituent parts. So that's really where QVSource sits with QlikView. So sentiment and text analytics, this is quite a new technology really. We can take any text that's in QlikView, so it could be loaded in previously from Facebook or Twitter. Or as I said, it could come from your customer service response forms or from Google spreadsheets or from Excel spreadsheets or even from your SQL database. It doesn't really matter, it's just text. And we can connect to one of several vendors, for example, Repustate or Alchemy. And we send the text over to their systems, and their computers will crunch through the text and then determine things like the sentiment. So is it a positive thing? Is it a negative thing? So on and so forth. We can also break down the text into its key elements and actually discover the more interesting things. You can have a sentence which contains lots of key words that you may be interested in or very little. So one will be more important than the other. We also support multiple languages. Well, rather the vendors support multiple languages, so some will support Spanish, German, French, Dutch. We have one special connector that can link to 60 languages, so you can do Arabic, Chinese, pretty much any language on the earth probably. So it really is not just an English dedicated thing. It can be used for other languages, and it's successfully used by some of our European customers. So what our connector layers do is to break down large volumes of text and break them down into their key parts, which enables you to go through this massive data and focus on what's important and get a more holistic sort of view of the text and what's being said. And also it means you can turn text into something more presentable, more user-friendly, more digestible. And of course, using QlikView and being able to navigate through the data, you can then start clicking around and discovering information based on those keywords. I'd like to point out that there are some limitations to sentiment text analytics, in particular sentiment, because obviously language is a very fluid thing, which is constantly changing, and things that are said today will have different meanings to different people at different generations at different times. So what a teenager might say today will have a very different meaning to what your grandparents might say. Also, text may be out of context, so it may be in a conversation. So again, there are a few limitations. However, having said that, what you can get with this kind of thing is a flow and a feel for what's being said, especially when it's keyed in with things like the text analytics, so not just the sentiment. So it can add real value to your business. And I think as this technology improves over time, so too with the accuracy of the sentiment. So it's an example of what you can do. So we can take a Facebook fan page, which is a public page. You don't need to be a friend of that page to look at it. And using QVSource, we can bring down all the comments and postings on that Facebook page. And for some pages, there will be literally thousands of postings per day. So if you take like a famous pop star like Beyonce, she's probably getting several thousand postings every day. And trying to analyze that will be very difficult. You can't just sit there watching the page, hitting refresh. You need some kind of methodical, consistent way of measuring and recording what's going on. And using QVSource, you can do that. You can periodically, or using QlikView, bring in the data, say every day, every hour, every 15 minutes, once a week, whatever your needs may be, and then you can analyze the text. So we can bring out the comments and postings and pick out the key words. The key thing with this, of course, that this is public pages, so you don't have to have a relationship with, say, in this case, Windows phones. This means that you can do competitor analysis to see what other people are saying about you or about them and understand your place on Facebook. You also, of course, don't need to really use Facebook. You could just have an account with Facebook and just, as a passive user, look at what's going on. So what we can do on a Facebook page, well, we can bring out the postings, who said what and when and what's liked, and then we can mix that with our text analytics and sentiment connector. And we can build up a data snapshot of what's happening now. And on our website, on QVSource.com, you can download a Facebook page. So if you've got QlikView, even the personal edition, you should be able to download our application within a few minutes, have a QlikView application with a fan page that's of interest to you, either of your own or of competitors. I'd like to differentiate though, this is for public Facebook pages, not for your own pages. So if you want to have analytics for your own page, we do have an insights connector which will look at specifically the behind the scenes of your page. So it's like the Google Analytics, the traffic and the visitor interaction on your site. So the more kind of private things to you as a business. And again, we have an application available that you can use. With Twitter, we can reach out and perform search terms. So I said you could search for the term hashtag Wimbledon 2013, and I'm sure you see lots of text about Murray winning at the weekend. And we can take that text and we can do sentiment analysis, bring out what people are saying, bring out keywords, pulling out the hashtags, any media links, any pictures, and so on. So again, you can take this massive data and sort of break it down into its interesting key parts. And again, using QlikView, you can then sort of navigate through the things that are of interest to you, the things that maybe you wouldn't have expected to have seen, which we'll talk about there. We can also use something called a cloud connector, which will let you take Twitter accounts and then understand how influential that person is. So you can get things, or I'll show you in a moment, you can get things like understand advocates and detractors of what's going on Twitter. We also have a YouTube connector, which allows you to search public videos across YouTube. You can also pull out the comments and the postings against those videos. So again, you can understand what's being said about you and your competitors on YouTube. Because video is becoming a more important social media platform. And again, we have an application available which you can download and use. We also have a general web connector, which lets you connect to pretty much any web API that outputs JSON or XML. It's a bit more techy, I guess, this slide. What I'm trying to say here is that you don't have to be, you're not limited to what we have connected to. We have a very general one which lets you connect to many other APIs. And again, you can bring that text from those different APIs and do text and sentence analytics. So what I'm trying to get here is that you can take many different data sources and bring them to QlikView and perhaps overlay them with your internal data and get a really holistic view of your business. We have a new connector called Board Reader coming out soon. Board Reader is a company that aggregates data from millions of blogs, news sites, forums, and have them for the last 10 years. So they kind of represent and log a large proportion of the web, not everything because the web's so big, but a large proportion. And now using QVSource, you can now perform searches across their entire data set. So this is a more complete brand watch, I guess, with a single connector, especially when it's complemented with things like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. And of course, you can take blogs and the postings and the sites and the forums, and again, perform the sort of sentence and text analytics. This is in private testing, so if you'd like to know more about that, please get in touch with us. So here's an example of a QlikView application which is mixing Twitter and Facebook data. So on the left we have Twitter and on the right we have Facebook. And this particular one is looking at mobile phone handsets. So you can see a large peak on the right-hand side under the Facebook channel, and that's actually the BlackBerry outage from a couple of years ago. So if you look at the application in detail, you can see the number of comments and the kinds of comments changing throughout the day as people wake up and realise that their BlackBerries aren't working effectively. And obviously you can see the peak of the crisis, and then you can see the crisis ebbing away. So that's an example of how we, as an external company, have looked at Facebook postings on BlackBerry and can see a very real impact, in this case a crisis, on their social media site, how people are talking about them. And interestingly, when people were talking about BlackBerry, a lot of the warts started coming out. People saying, yeah, this isn't working, and I don't like this, and I don't like that. And a lot of things came out of the conversations through the frustration and anger, which obviously of interest to their competitors. This is an interesting little slide in that it's from Westminster City Council, and you can see along the top band they've got just short of 5,000 followers. But when you take into consideration the followers of the followers, they actually have an audience of potentially 6.5 million people, which means that if, in this case, there's a bad thing or a good thing happening within the borough, then potentially there's a massive audience that can see that. So if you think about your own brands, even though you may not have many followers directly, indirectly you may have millions, and it quickly escalates. It kind of shows the importance really of doing this right, because if you have got followers on Twitter and you aren't really tracking what you're doing, you don't have a proper strategy in place, then obviously you can get the wrong message across and it can be taken the wrong way by those people. This is an application that's on the demo.QlikView website, put together by the QlikTech team in the US, and they were tracking videos and newspaper articles and tweets on the US elections last year, and they were then using text analytics to understand what was being said. So here's a word cloud, and again you're kind of breaking down millions of words and bits of text and making it into a very simple, easy to read thing. And of course, using QlikView, you can then drill down on those words and understand what's being said and how it's being said and where the sources are and what kind of people are talking about them. So a lot of information and a breadth of knowledge is available. Here's a very simple chart. This is again on the demo.QlikView site. But it's kind of showing how you can take Twitter and Facebook data, merge them together, and get a very overview of the situation. So on the right-hand side, we have the volumes of positive or neutral statements on Twitter and Facebook, and on the left we have the negative comments. And you can kind of get a feel instantly, you know, what the feelings are without actually looking down. And of course, being QlikView, you can then draw down onto the bits we like and bits of interest and start our investigations to answer those next questions. So as you can see, it really does play very well into the QlikView model of doing business analysis. And here, I just want to talk very briefly about promoters and detractors. So we are looking at how many times people post, I think this is on Facebook, about our particular brands, and trying to understand what they're saying and what their average score is. So are people talking generally negatively or generally positively? So if they're talking negatively, then obviously they're detractors. There's something they don't like about our service, or perhaps about our competitor service or products. And why is that? Can we understand what they're saying? So again, being QlikView, we can draw down those people and see the individual postings, and then go into more, and then basically take action. So it may be highlighting an issue of a competitor, which you can then play on, or highlighting a problem that you have, and then you can fix. And equally, you can look at promoters. They're the people that talk about you a lot and say generally very positive things. So obviously you want to minimise detractors and maximise promoters, convert one to the other. And using QlikView, using test and measure, so regular recording of this data, you can actually see how your performance is changing over time. And again, making a real impact, positive impact on your business. And it is a very simple sort of QlikView application that just shows a very simple Twitter app. You can download this from our website. Within a few minutes, you can have your own Twitter tracking, as it were. We can get almost like a live feed of what's being said, the hashtags that are coming out, and we're pulling out the keywords and the sentiments of those, of the average sentiment of those statements. So again, we can kind of see what the top stories are and understand what's happening. So this is actually from an event that we were at last year in Eindhoven, in Holland, which is a QlikView event. This is a snapshot throughout that day, so I think early in the morning. So we were seeing what people were talking about on Twitter about that event, and we could see that you can almost see certain keywords rising up the charts throughout the day. So that can be quite an interesting thing if you say running events or running a promotion. So with QVSource, we connect to many different web APIs or connectors. So we have our social media connectors, we have our text analytics connectors and sentiment. We can connect to Google Analytics, Google Drive, Google Plus, mailboxes. We connect to standard OData, so you can now bring in SharePoint lists into QlikView, MongoDBs, and so on and so forth. So we aren't just social media, we aren't just text analytics. Obviously, this is the focus today, but there are many more things that we are able to link to, and that you can now bring these external data into your internal reporting systems, i.e. QlikView. Some of our customers, you may recognise one or two of these, probably you won't recognise most of them. So just talk about one or two of these. So Eurotunnel is an interesting one, and if you go to the QlikView website or our website, there was actually a press release about how they're using QlikView, and as mentioned QVSource as well. So Eurotunnel don't actually use Twitter actively. What they do is they use it passively, so they watch what other people are saying about them and their competitors, and they use that information to help make decisions. So one example is if a train breaks down on the tracks and people are stuck in the tunnels, well, if they can get a signal that is, then they might be tweeting stuck on a train outside wherever it is, outside Paris, been sat here an hour, not happy, it's too hot, whatever it may be. And then at Eurotunnel, they can track this on Twitter and then get a message down to the train and say, people are complaining, give out free drinks, whatever it is they need to do. So they're using Twitter to drive a better customer service experience. And that's also good as well, because if a customer sees that Eurotunnel is being proactive with their needs, that's surely a good thing. It's not falling on deaf ears, so to speak. Slight difference to text analytics or sentiment is budget placement and early media. Both of these companies do got analytics to bring in thousands of rows of data into their QlikView application, helping to drive better business decisions. So they're overlaying the external data with their internal data to understand the impact on their business. And Future Publishing are a new customer of ours, and they're using YouTube to report across all of their magazines. So Future Publishing have things like Molly Makes or crafting magazines and lots of computing magazines, like I think TV3 is another one of theirs, and they're using QVSource along with other connectors to look at YouTube and other things to understand what's being said and the impact on their business and channels. So that's quite an exciting one for us. So what people like about QVSource and QlikView, well, we pride ourselves on great support and responsiveness. So we have a dedicated documentation site. The applications and the products are always in sync. And what we've done is we've taken the complexity out of getting data. So we've kind of simplified it. So you don't need to be a technology person now to get this information from, say, Twitter or Facebook. Anybody can really do this, and we have great instructions to do that. And of course, we work closely with the APIs to make sure we're always in sync. If you're used to QlikView and you enjoy QlikView scripting, again, it's a very small learning curve to get the QVSource-based stuff into applications. And using our kind of starter applications that you can download freely from our website, you can very quickly get your own relevant information to your QlikView applications. So if you're trialing QlikView and you want to get something interesting, you can use our personal Facebook application, and you can then look at your friends and see what they're saying through your connected through Facebook, and you might discover a few interesting things about some of your friends that you didn't realise. You can also get more data than many alternative applications. So we're now opening out QlikView to more data sources, so you can now get a lot more kind of coverage, I guess, and more insight into your business. And of course, the main bit is all in QlikView. So as I keep mentioning, you can kind of, and Dave touched on before, you can answer those difficult next questions. You can kind of drill down and navigate through the data and what's being said in any way that you see fit. And that really is a massive benefit when you're looking at something so liquid as social media data and text analytics, because there are no constraints. It's very much what people are feeling right now in terms of what's being said. We have a full documentation site on our website you can go to. We have lots of Qlik applications. Every connector's got its own dedicated page. So it's very, very easy to get started with our products. Very easy indeed. You can stay connected with us by following us on Twitter, QVSource, like us on Facebook, we're on Qlik Community. We're also on Qlik Market. We're the #1 rated on at the moment by quite a way. You can follow us on our blog, Facebook, and so on. So we're using social media to connect to people, and you're more than welcome to follow us and get in touch. So that's it really. Any questions?
Well, thank you very much, Darren, for the session. I mean, I think that what Darren's covered there really is the essence of QlikView. It's the ability to take data, internal and external, structured and unstructured, and combine it to provide insights that are fundamental to running better businesses. And it also demonstrates the other kind of strength of QlikView, which is our exceptional partnerships. So working with partners with great skill and capability to provide an integrated offering. So thank you very much for that, Darren. I mean, this whole area of sentiment and social analysis is so interesting and is so important to get control of, and hopefully you've seen today that the combination of industrial CodeBox and QlikView is making real progress in this area. We did ask for some questions, and we have got some questions. I suggest actually that we'll read out the first couple that we've got, and then if you have any questions, you can post them in the Q&A, and we'll see how we get on with the questions we have so far. So can I ask Claire to read out the first one, because I can't see the screen where I am?
Yep. So we've got a couple of questions here from Russell West. So first one from Russell is, with the connector to Twitter, does the search term have to involve the hashtag?
No. It can be, you can search on a user, so on a particular Twitter account, or a phrase. It's just like searching in Google really, so you can use a search phrase or a hashtag. It's entirely up to you. You can even use locations, so tweets near New York and that kind of thing. So it's quite powerful. So you'd search just like you would on Twitter normally. So if you go to Twitter and use a search bar, it's exactly the same with QVSource and QlikView.
Okay, great. And the second question here from Russell. You mentioned searching blogs and forums. What type of search is it? And also, will it be a Google star search, or is it more technical?
Well, in the case of Board Reader, they track blogs and websites. So they track, I don't know, 60 million blogs and growing. So they will take the content of that blog, and you'll get the comments against them. Using QVSource, you can then just look for just do basic keyword search analysis. You can say, give me all the blogs from the last month for the word CodeBox or for the word Wimbledon or wherever it may be. So it's not technical. What we've done is provided a simple interface that anybody can work with. That particular connector, as I said earlier, is in private testing, so it is changing, but fundamentally it's simple. And that's how QVSource works. We want to simplify things so you haven't got to be technical. And just like QlikView puts power in the hands of the average user, we want to make sure that QVSource does the same so it all fits.
Okay, and we have another question here. Is there any kind of trial I can use? I understand there are pre-made applications, but would like to see the development closer.
Yeah, so if you go to QVSource.com, there's a free trial you can download. It's fully functional. It's only time limited. I think it's about a month or 6 weeks. All the connectors are available, so you can create your own applications, or you can take our existing ones and rip them apart, do whatever you want with them basically. We call them starter applications to get you started. Each of them have their own, each demo where one available has its own documentation page and explains how you can very simply get it set up for your individual needs. So in the case of Twitter, within a few minutes you could put it in your search terms and have your application available. So yeah, you can also go to QlikMarket as well and read more about the product, and that'll get then direct to the right place for QVSource. And of course, read all the great reviews about us as well.
Great. So we have another question here. What are your most common limitations your customers have found?
That's a difficult question to answer because every connector has its own set of limitations due to the nature of the API that we connect to. So a lot of limitations are imposed by, say, Twitter or Facebook. So to give one example of a Twitter limitation is that you can only go back either a week's worth of results or the last 1,500 tweets. So if you have a Twitter search term that's not particularly active, you could probably do that once a day, once a week, and get every tweet that you need. Obviously, if it's a fast-moving Twitter search term, for example, Wimbledon 2013 at the weekend, I'd imagine you have to have much more refreshing of the data, much more frequent refreshing of the data. So that's one limitation. So you can get the data, you've got to change your frequency of QlikView reloads. But that's a difficult one to answer because it's very much down to the individual connector. In terms of sentiment text analytics, as I mentioned earlier, there is a limitation in terms of things like humour and irony and things being taken out of context. So you get individual statements, which form part of the conversation, and you may or may not get 100% accurate results because of that. But that's just the nature of language, and I'm sure will improve over time.
Okay, we have another question. When sending internal data from a database externally for text enrichment and sentiment analysis and then back into a QlikView app, do you have any stats on performance?
Yeah, we do actually. I haven't got them to hand. If you go to our wiki site, so QVSource.com/wiki, and you go to the sentiment analysis connector, you'll see that we've done some analysis on performance, basically, on how many how many bits of text you can send and how long it takes. With some of the sentiment connectors, I'll just touch on the internal. They have, obviously we're passing data over the web, and many will have a secure HTTPS connection, so the data technically secure. Obviously it's not 100% secure, but it should be secure as it can be. And you can send over batches, so you can send over like blocks of text, and they'll come back stored together, which improve performance. So yes, we do have some available on our website.
Okay, and we also have another question here. Thank you. How do you see this type of analysis developing in the future?
Well, that's difficult to answer really. Social media and our use of online systems is growing constantly. And who knows what will be available in 5 years? Will Facebook be no longer used and derelict in 5 years and someone else has taken over? So that's always a challenge. I think that social media is becoming more ingrained in our daily lives, and we are talking more and more online. I guess we're using the telephone less and emails more and Facebook more to organise events. That's from a personal experience, but everyone organises things through Facebook these days. So I think that more data is being captured there and therefore is available for analysis. In terms of text analytics and sentiment, I think that they will be improving over time and they'll become much more clever in how they do things. And it's an evolving technology and we'll just get better and better over time.
Great. And the final question we've got, what industries are using sentiment analysis most frequently?
Well, QVSource is used by a wide range of organisations, from some very tiny one-man bands or students doing their PhDs through to some large sort of marketing agencies. We do get it's a very broad mix. So we do have some retail companies using it. We have some software vendors using it. We have some transport companies using it. It's all sorts really. I guess in many ways, if you've got an online presence or you are talked about online, then it's of importance to you. It doesn't really matter how big you are. If you're a small company using the web, it may drive 80% of your revenues, and it's incredibly important. If you're a large organisation with many brands, then you want to have a control over those brands. And a bad bit of PR on social media, can have a detrimental effect on your business. So, for example, I think Gap changed their logo a few years ago. It cost them millions of pounds probably. Then there was like an online uproar, and they reverted back to their old logo. So yeah, that's an example really.
Okay, brilliant. So there's a question here about having a copy of the slides afterwards. So just so you know, everybody in the call, this webinar has been recorded, so we will be posting the recording and including it in a follow-up email to you all, along with some of the links to ClickMarket and the Industrial CodeBox website, etc. So the information will be provided, and you're free then to forward it on to colleagues for them to also watch and listen to the webinar.
Okay, and with that, I think that's all the questions that have been posted. So I'd like to thank Darren for his time today, for a very interesting and informative presentation. I'd also like to thank everybody for attending the call. As Claire said, we will post details of the slides in various places. But thank you very much for your time, and we hope that you enjoyed this morning's session. Thank you very much.